Hi, I'm Nick Palmisano.
And I'm Matt Finney.
And this is the Bad News Network. Not sure if you've heard of it, but there's this little disease going around called COVID-19. Anyway, it's back in the news for 4 reasons this week, and I think we have to talk about it to try to keep you as informed as we can. If I'm being honest, I hate talking about it. Not just because it's taken members of my family or because it's placed life on hold for most of the nation, but because people have extremely emotional reactions to it and any news about it. Everyone is now an expert on viruses. Everyone is an expert on masks. Everyone is sure they are right. But I wouldn't be doing this completely unpaid job of delivering news to you properly if I didn't cover it. So here goes. Texas's governor, followed quickly by Mississippi's governor, have announced this week that they are removing all state quarantines as well as individual mask mandates. Governor Abbott stated, "It's time to get Texas back to work." Abbott's new policy has sent social media into a tizzy. The left is already labeling him a murderer, while many on the right are applauding him, saying that masks don't do anything. So what's the truth? Well, that's not as easy to identify as I wish it were. Here's what we know, and I'll take it in chunks. First, I'll start with our economy. Our nation's economic response to the virus has been appalling. There are about 30 million businesses in the United States, so about 9% of the population is made up of entrepreneurs. So it's easy to see how so many people would prefer to stay home, especially if the government were willing to pay additional monies to keep them there safely, which it's not. The government, whether you're talking national, state, or local, freaked the out when the pandemic hit and put the kibosh on pretty much everyone for a while. And for a few weeks, that was probably okay. We were getting our bearings. But then time went on and the government increasingly favored allowing some companies to run, but not all. Amazon, Walmart, Target were okay. But your corner bookstore, cafe, diner, not so much. For some reason, if you were big, you were essential, but if you weren't, you just had to kind of deal with it. And if you so much as said, "I need to keep my business running or I'm going to go bankrupt," the far left screamed that you were trying to kill people, that you were greedy, or that you should have saved more for a rainy day while they smugly looked at you. I, as a guy who was lucky enough to make it through this crisis intact and even started a new business on February 17th, not knowing the shitstorm that was coming, still wanted to punch these people in the face for their obnoxious and, yes, selfish nature and total lack of empathy for the real driver in our economy, small business. I realize that the loud people on social media are not indicative of most of us. I really do know that. But it's still sad when people are fired up about getting their 2K or their rent forgiveness or their college tuition forgiveness, but they don't care about small business owners or landlords, many of whom only own one rental property and it was a huge investment for them, or anyone involved in business. You know, the act of actually creating jobs to pay people that allows the government to collect taxes in the first place, which is where you get your 2K. When we look back on this, we'll probably find that shutting down businesses was a big mistake. We transferred about $4 trillion in wealth from small business and individuals to large businesses, private equity, big banks, and venture. Yeah, I bet those guys will really look after society and our best interests. But it's not just the economic hit that makes this policy bad. It turns out that most of the COVID spreading isn't happening outside of our homes in the first place. Based on the most recent CDC data, it looks like 94.5% of the COVID spreading is indoor house parties and gatherings. Almost none of it happens outside, even in crowds. Almost none of it happens in restaurants. Almost none of it happens in the workplace. So opening up the economy is probably not a bad idea. In fact, we probably should have never shut it down. So what about masks? Do they work? Yes and no. There have been studies that claim they do, and there is a recent Danish mask study that many on the right have been pointing to as the definitive proof that masks are a hoax. So I want to cover that study a little bit. First of all, was it a real study that used real scientific methods? Yes, it was. Every element about it appears to be legitimate. It also used 3,000 subjects, which is very extensive. So what did it really find? Well, it found that you were 20% less likely to get the coronavirus if you wore a mask. It also found that 50% of the people in the group that were supposed to wear a mask for the duration admitted that they didn't always wear it properly, e.g. they had their nose out, or maybe it wasn't tight around their face. So anecdotally, many of the people who did get the virus admitted to not wearing the mask properly, though I was unable to track down data in this regard from the study. So why are people saying masks don't work and using this study as an example? The variation in the mask and the unmasked group wasn't statistically significant enough to definitively rule out the possibility that masks do not work, but the scientists who executed the study believe that they do if worn properly. So what should you do? It all comes down to virus load in the air when you breathe. When you're outside, it's hard to get enough virus load to get the disease. When you're socially distanced, it's even harder. When you have a mask on, it's even harder. When you're in your living room with 14 other people, you're probably getting that shit. So what do I think of Texas and Mississippi? I think opening the economy was the right answer. I think removing the mask mandate and social distancing mandate was probably premature. That being said, it's important to remember that the state doesn't keep private businesses from having their own rules or from you for wearing your own mask. Most businesses are signaling that they will keep the mask and capacity restrictions in place, and patrons should respect those wishes or shop elsewhere. Here's to hoping it all works out. I'll close out the COVID discussion with some bad news and some good news. Brazil is currently getting its ass kicked by COVID because a mutated version is spreading like wildfire through the country. Even people who have previously had COVID can get the mutation, though they appear to weather it far better than those who haven't. The main thing that seems to help, though, is the vaccine. Those who have been vaccinated have been able to prevent the virus or ward off any of its major effects. Unfortunately for Brazil, very little vaccine is available, and their overworked healthcare system is having a hard time distributing what it has. Which brings me to my last point. The Biden administration just announced that by May, they'll have enough vaccines to give everyone in the country the vaccine if you want it. So if you can and your health allows it, consider getting it. Currently, 25 to 30% of Americans are turning it down, which is going to open the window for greater spread of a disease that will soon become preventable. It also opens the door for more mutation. Herd immunity takes place at 95%. 75% isn't quite going to get us there. So kick it around.
A new stimulus package has passed the House and is on its way to the Senate for approval. As of reading this report, the Senate is allegedly supposed to vote on this soon and will likely have more information available than I currently have. This is the least transparent bill we've had to look at so far, and with that said, here's what I could find. Stimulus checks will be rolling out in the amount of $1,400. Some of the country will be pissed that the Democrats straight up lied about the delivery of $2,000 checks. Some of the country will be happy to get literally any assistance, and some of the country won't be getting this check at all based on their income. Unemployment benefits will be extended through August and be set at about $400 additional pay. The minimum wage hike proposal of $15 an hour may have to be sidelined. Since Democrats are trying to slam the bill through with a simple majority on the grounds of budget reconciliation, the parliamentarian deemed it unconstitutional and stated that it would most likely be shot down in the Supreme Court. Both sides have to be able to debate such a proposal, so it would be better served as its own bill and not part of the stimulus package. Student loan forgiveness is another hot topic. Democrats have been pushing for at least $50,000 in student loan forgiveness. Biden originally said that he wanted no part of that and wasn't going to do it, but now he's saying he's good for $10,000. Many college grads who paid off their own loans ask, is this retroactive? There's a super vague entry about allocating funds to helping schools reopen. $160 billion is set to go to states to help distribute more vaccines. I'll tell you what, you give me $3.2 billion and I'll make sure everyone in North Carolina gets vaccinated. The eviction foreclosure moratoriums will be extended until September 30th, with $30 billion going to renters and smaller landlords, tiny landlords. However, Biden has signed this already as an executive order. It's not really part of the bill, so we don't exactly know where that $30 billion is actually going. Weird. Additional money has been allocated for state, local, and tribal governments. Some of this comes in the form of $1.5 million for a bridge to connect New York to Canada, $100 million for an underground rail project for Silicon Valley, and $480 million for the preservation and maintenance of the Native American language. Another $50 million for environmental justice grants. There's a good chunk headed to prop up airlines and avoid layoffs, and the same for government workers. Healthcare workers are to receive a special benefit, however, according to Nancy Pelosi during her press conference last week. In it, Pelosi stated that we thank healthcare workers by letting them keep their jobs. Yeah, healthcare workers, just be glad you get to keep your jobs, you ungrateful peasants. This went over about as well as could be expected in the healthcare community.
The situation in Myanmar continues to burn onward as protesters and military forces clash again. So far, almost 30 people have died in the past month due to the growing unrest, with more suffering and injuries. According to one protester, They didn't shoot us with water cannons. There was no warning to disperse. They just fired their guns. That sounds pretty not okay, and much of the world is in agreement with us condemning the military coup. Also, the captured Miss Su Kwai, the good guy of this story, was seen for the first time since her imprisonment. Kind of. She appeared in court via a video link, which I'm not sure really counts. This conflict goes even further as Myanmar's UN seat is currently under question. After making a passionate speech to the UN and also writing them a lengthy letter, Myanmar's original ambassador, Mo Tun, claims that he rejects the country's military takeover and is still the rightful ambassador to the UN. However, our classic villain, General Min, had differing opinions. So what did he do about it? He stated that Ambassador Tun has betrayed his country and they fired him immediately. Now there is a fight between who gets the seat, Ambassador Tun or a deputy ambassador as his replacement. That's a surefire way to get the UN to buy your story. Actually, China is on the UN's Human Rights Panel, so it might legitimately be a way to get them to buy your story. They kinda suck.
Investigators admitted that the officer who was bludgeoned to death by rioters at the Capitol insurrection attempting to overthrow the American government and assassinate all the Democrat congressmen and lay waste to the country does not appear to have died by bludgeoning, or for that matter, appear to have been bludgeoned at all. The death of Officer Brian Sicknick has been at the forefront of the Capitol riot reports, highlighting the gruesomeness and the danger that was inherent at the event. But according to recent reports, the autopsy of Sicknick has not been released yet, but indicated that no blunt force trauma was evident. We don't have any information as to what the actual cause of death could be. Thus far, the majority of the media reports list at least 4 deaths caused by the Capitol riots. All but one are due to pre-existing health conditions, and the other officer firing through a door and striking a former Air Force veteran and killing her. The results of an autopsy can take up to 90 days, according to some healthcare workers, so the delay isn't indicative of something nefarious. The new information does highlight the media's continued use of tragedy to further agenda, regardless of facts or lack thereof. It's this kind of shit that made us start BNN in the first place.
Scientists for the first time have taken pictures of glow-in-the-dark sharks producing their own light. The sharks were found to have been swimming in Flint, Michigan runoff water and had started to grow multiple eyes. That's a joke. The kite fin is the world's largest known bioluminescent vertebrate. What does that mean to a normal person? Shark big, shark glow, shark deep. The deepwater sharks are one of the species of almost 50 that are believed to produce their own light. But since they live more than 600 feet below the surface, it could never be photographed. Until now! Strangely enough, the sharks use the light to disappear, as the light mimics the glow from the distant ocean surface. That's cool, I guess, but what I really want to know is how hard the sharks rave. 50 species of sharks that can light up their bodies in pitch black water? That has to be some kind of awesome. This week, scientists discovered the oldest known group of dinosaurs on Earth, called the Titanosaurs. Titanosaur sizes range from 25 feet to about 115 feet, depending on the species within the group. Yes, the species have names. No, I'm not going to try to pronounce them. These dinosaurs are said to have had similar body types to that of the Brontosaurus, the vegetarians with the really long necks. For reference, Brontosaurus had a maximum height of 90 feet in comparison to the Titanosaurs' maximum of 115 feet. The Titanosaurs are estimated to be about 140 million years old, which is almost as old as your mom. And these particular remains were from a species called Ninja Titan, because of their sword skills and ability to disappear into a cloud of smoke.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo stated in a press conference that he is embarrassed and deeply sorry if he offended anyone by touching them inappropriately, which he also says he didn't do. He then stated that he has never done anything that he would be ashamed of while in office. Finally, he wants you all to know that he isn't going to resign because the people voted for him. And if the people wanted a wholesome, honest, and useful politician, then they wouldn't have voted for him in the first place.
A man in California is trying to sell his home on Lake Tahoe, which sounds all right. Sounds pretty normal. Wrong. This weirdo has a lot of mannequins, and they are scattered completely throughout the house. All of the mannequins are women, and all of them are wearing what appear to be prom dresses. Now you might be thinking, Nick, hold on. It's not that bad when you buy the place. The owner takes all of their belongings anyway. Wrong again. This nutter is selling the home as is. So if you buy the house, you have to take care of all the mannequins yourself. So if you're also a whack job with a penchant for the movie Mannequin from the 1980s, then sure, buy this place. Or if you want a lot of cheap targets to use on the range, also buy this place. Actually, who am I kidding? You can dry fire and dream of shooting them until the price of ammo goes down. Anyway, there's no way that this house is not haunted, and probably some of these mannequins have cameras for eyes, and one of them will likely kill you. I would sooner buy a house built on an old Indian burial ground / pet cemetery in Michael Jackson's backyard during the blood moon than I would this shit show. Google has announced that it will not replace the cookies it is phasing out with other web tracking tools on websites they do not own. For most of you, this is meaningless information, but it's going to be significant for many advertisers and companies who have long relied on tracking consumer behavior in this manner. The move also will put increasing pressure on Facebook, which is already under fire as Apple has blocked the app from being able to track most of the data it needs for ads on its new iOS 14 operating system. But have no fear. Google is unrolling a new manner of tracking groups of people anonymously, so while it won't track your data specifically, it will put you in buckets associated with interests. In the end, the result will probably be the same, but you'll retain 7% more of your privacy than before. Maybe, but probably not. And finally, in Florida Man news, Florida man Alex Bonilla was sentenced to 20 years in prison and 10 years of probation for holding up his neighbor at gunpoint, tying him to the bed, and cutting off his willy with a pair of dull scissors. This bothers me on a few levels. First, keep your scissors sharp. Second, come on, man, dick move. Literally. Bonilla apparently executed this Johnson-ectomy as a result of his wife cheating on him with this neighbor 2 months earlier. And I get it, that guy was a real pecker. However, call me nuts, but in a world where 4 billion people are women and at least a few of them are single, maybe pulling the Bobbitt special, leaving your kids without parents and spending 20 years in the pen where they may not love the reason you're there was a cockeyed approach. Now, we're all at half-mast reading this. Everyone thinks you're a tool, your neighbor has no tool, and absolutely no one involved will be having fun tonight, let alone Wang Chunging tonight. Nevertheless, you are the cock of the walk, Florida man. When you go out, you go all out, and your neighbor's anaconda will never again want none, even if she's got buns, hun. And with that, I'm Nick Palmisano.
And I'm Matt Finney.
And this is the Bad News Network. Our news is at least as bad as the news you're getting already, and I've got to tell you, I just bought a cargo van that's all white and creepy, and it makes me happy. As always, you can shop at rangerup.com and get 25% off using the code BNN. Have a great weekend.